that needs to be run. So we founded the company, and the interesting part for this game was that we actually took the mechanic from a game that we designed at a game jam. And it just, the original idea was a rotating chessboard. And in the end, we only took the mechanic, built a new game around it, and it became this board game that has a rotational sort of mechanic on it, on the board. It was very interesting project, probably a bit too complex project as the first project, and also I'll talk about it a little bit later on, what we learned during this process, but we put too many ideas in one box. In the end, I'm really happy that we did do the game, and the reason why it's the only game we ever published was then we pivoted the company towards digital stuff for board games, and that's what we're focusing on now. So far, this is the only game that we published, and I'm really hoping that there will be more designs in the future.
Yeah, of course, initially for me, it's also started just making prototypes with my friends and for me myself. And but like there was one game which was called Politics. I had a few friends who it was kind of this satirical game about Finnish political scene and kind of fun little game. And we were just talking with a few of our friends that hey, of course we understood that there's no like market for this, or like it's very hard to sell this to a publisher even, and we decided, hey, let's found our company of our own and published ourselves. So 3 of my first games were published by our own company called Ondi Games. I think it still probably exists somewhere. But like, yeah, we understood fast that like the distribution challenges and all the logistics and production, it's a job of its own and not something, at least I'm very excited about myself. And yeah, it's very hard to make a living if you just make your own games as a publisher house, unless you have like a big volumes and so on. So yeah, I kind of pivoted the strategy after that to go to pitch my games to external publishers, which I think is something that I would recommend people to try to do first. But of course, and then it led to building relationship with many of the kind of some of the German publishers, but also publishers in Finland, like Lautapelit. So the next games after those, I kind of try to find an external publisher, and so I made a few games like Walnut Grow with Lookout Spiel and with Paul Lane, who's here actually in the showing his art stuff there, and then Eclipse with Lautapelit, and some other games with some other publisher, like, but yeah, it needs, so I think like if you want to do that, I think like it's very important to build a relationship. So I went to Göttingen and I went to Essen many times and met the publishers and built a relationship with them and showed the prototypes. But it's a hard work and it needs a lot of time and effort to make that happen. But yeah, that's how I've been transitioning.
Interesting. So if you're already making board games for your friends, you're already on your way, as these esteemed board game designers started there as well. And Touko already started me on another question, so let's jump to that. So what does it actually take to get your board game published? This is the big one.
Yeah, I think there's many routes nowadays, which is great. Of course, like you can found your own company and do the traditional route, like publish your own games. That's one. Now there's like the Kickstarter, of course, offers a lot of new opportunities for that, but it's not easy. It's very easy to underestimate the challenges with the distribution and logistics and everything. And it's all about marketing after that, like especially in Kickstarter. I guess we talk more about Kickstarter later. But then, yeah, the other route is to try to pitch your game to external publishers, and that's something I think it's something that, of course, takes a lot of time, and to be honest, like I think one of the challenge with the whole industry is that many of the publishers, they are not super professional in terms of, answering your emails or keeping sure that your prototypes don't get lost anywhere. So if you go to that route, have a lot of patience and wait for a long time for publishers to review your games and be willing to travel to Germany and do stuff like that. But I think it is fun. It is fun if you have like a long perspective and have a lot of patience.
Yeah, we didn't, and so we self-published this. We did go to several game shows and we did pitch to even very notable publishers, And I remember one meeting where a publisher who was interested in this game asked me that, so are we willing to wait 18 months before this game comes out? And then we discussed about why is it 18 months, and they told us that, well, first of all, they want to learn the game themselves, and then their teams will take a look. They probably want to change some art because certain art sells better in the US, maybe different cover art for Europe market. They need to fully review the game mechanics, and are we ready that the game might be changed? Maybe there are some new mechanics, some mechanics are dropped. So there's going to be a whole process that takes up to a year, where probably all the art and a lot of game mechanics might change. And then the whole production cycle is typically at least 6 months for games that are printed in Asia. So basically, after that discussion, we sort of decided that, you know what, let's do the first print run at least by ourselves, because we wanted to get the game out there. And now we had this company that we're running, and we didn't want to wait for 18 months for our first game to come out. So in the end, we just decided to dig up the money ourselves. We did try to do a very hastily crowdfunding campaign on Mecenati of all platforms, which raised a respectable 6,000 euros, it was one of the biggest campaigns on Mecenati at the time, but definitely not enough to publish a board game on. So we found the money elsewhere and published it on our own. So definitely a different route to pitching it to publishers.
Yeah, as a materialist, I finally noticed somebody talking about the real thing, which is money. It's always just effort and time and everything, but flying to Essen isn't cheap. I know that most of people here are probably students and not very, probably not inheriting any large sums from your family, let's say. So it is a very privileged thing to be able to traverse around the world and talk to publishers, because, as said, it's very, not probable that if you're nobody from Finland, that anybody's going to answer your email. Trust me, I know. So it's probably not very realistic to think that you're going to be able to publish anything when you're starting out and kind of, yeah. Before I do any tirade. Well, my strategy was find other people to do all the boring stuff for you. And it's luck.
How do you find those people?
Luck. Not gonna lie, it's just luck. I happened to run into one person when I had a trainee session in Tuonela 1,000 years ago, and from that contact, he created a company and did all the kind of busy work. I was just hired to do the game design for a board game that was finished but never saw the light of day as published. And Audatia had Guy Windsor doing the marketing and raising awareness for the game, and us, me and Games and Tales doing all the kind of logistical legwork for a lot of the stuff. And I haven't done a lot of board game stuff except for Royal Advisor in my own company, Happy Hobgoblin, which is currently in the process of being shut down. So I haven't done any physical board games after that. But when testing out, finding playtesters from the internet and virtual playtesting, VPT, I gave feedback to one guy's game, very kind of detailed and detailed feedback, and he was so impressed that he asked me to join him because he was from his own random contacts. He was introduced to a French miniature company who were looking for game designers for their own project, and that's what I'm doing now. So it's just contacts and random chance. So what you can do about it is take as many opportunities to make contacts and have those random chances happen. So yeah, that's my story, or the relevant bits.
Well, I tried most of these things, but my advice is not very good, so don't don't listen to it. But if you really want to become board game designer, don't listen to it. But my advice is like do the games the way you and your people around you enjoy the most. Because as you said, that it's you need luck, and it is kind of unlikely that you will have that luck, and it can happen that you will not become board game designer, but you will have great time with the making games and with your friends. And in the case, then if you are lucky and you became board game designer, then you will have you will be privileged to do it the way that you enjoy it most, and that's a great thing. But I can give you also one perspective, because as we founded a company, as you were talking about the boring stuff, so I managed to find people that consider this boring stuff exciting, like running a company and so on. So that was a great match. Before I was also in SN, but also you don't need to go, if you are going to SN just to pitch games, then maybe it can be waste of money and so on. But we were going to SN just to enjoy the games before, and then it makes sense to connect this with trying to find contacts. But I also see the other perspective, because we have a company and people are sending us prototypes and sending us ideas and asking for a game to be published. We have, we got lots of these emails. And important thing to realize, if you have really a good game and you hope that someone may publish it, they probably won't. You need to have a great game, because there is so many good games we are receiving, and I am kind of, feeling pity. We can't publish that many games, and there is lots of good games and great games on the market. So we only are waiting for something that clicks, and we say, hey, that's great. The great idea, let's work, because we will spend next year or more working on the game. So this sometimes even I say, I like this game, let's give it a chance. But then, because I'm working mostly on my games, then it's up to, we really need someone in our company to say, I want to get this game published, really get excited. So if the game is just good, it's not enough, yeah? So if you are pitching it to a publisher, you really need to have something exceptional. Yeah. Then the other ways, Kickstarter can be deceiving, because making a good game and making a good campaign for a game are not the same things. In both ways, yeah. You can have a great game, but if you fail to make a campaign, you don't convince people. And if you are able to make a great campaign, you have probably, if you are buying stuff on Kickstarter, you probably seen many times that there is a great campaign, but the game is then. So, if a publisher really takes your game, then and he's willing to invest his money and time and reputation to. Then you really know you have something really great, yeah. If you convinced this publisher, but still, if it is your dream to have a game published, and if you are willing to do, then Kickstarter is here for you. So, up to you.
We'll maybe talk a little bit about Kickstarter later, but I noticed that many of our panelists mentioned Essen. So for those of you who don't know, it's a big board game convention, kind of like almost more like market for board games in Germany. So that's the thing, if you were wondering what Essen means. But I want to drill down a little bit more on what do you actually need to, like, if I were to take this to an external publisher, like, what do I need to have to impress them? So let's say I have like rules and I have a board and I have like little figurines. Is that enough? Like, how finished does the product need to be to sell my game to a publisher? Do I need a pitch deck? Or is it enough just to have pieces of paper?
Okay, so it is always good if you can describe your game in a few sentences that makes the game look really interesting, because that's the thing that the publisher will need to do later. Yeah, they will need to sell the game to customers, and they will need to be able to convince them by few words, few sentences. So that's always useful, but it depends probably company from company. We really have some people that take a look at every prototype. Yeah, we are probably sometimes you can tell from the introduction email that this will probably not work. Yeah, like I have created Monopoly but better with more cards, you know, something like this. Yeah, that's and also there are other red flags that doesn't need if the person his first concern is so we don't steal his idea, his engineer's idea. That's also a red flag, because probably this person is not realistic. For us, it is much more valuable to have a person who has great ideas than to have these great ideas. Yeah. We read everything, but some things only one guy is reading, and then he said, "Hey, this looks interesting. Let's take a look." And then more people take a look at this, and these times it's useful to have some prototype like on Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia. So we can really, if we are interested in a game, then we can try it. And that's actually really happened with one game we are publishing now. It's called Starship Captains, and it was pitched to us, and this exactly happens. It looked interesting to the person who is pre-selecting game for us. Then it looked interesting to more people, so we gathered on Tabletop Simulator, played the game, and said, "Oh, hey, it has great potential." Then we start to work with the author on it. It changed during the development, but I believe the spark is still there, the spark that made us think that can be great. And also what was interesting, I said before, important what I said before is there were people that were excited to work on this very game. Yeah.
So create excitement somehow.
Yeah, that's definitely good, at least in the case of our company.
What about our other panelists? How much materials, how polished materials did you need to convince a publisher? Or did you have polished materials and that still didn't convince a publisher?
Well, I probably don't have any relevant answers to this, but I was kind of thinking about injecting a little bit of realism and into the previous point. There is a guy reading your email, and the guy might have eaten something the morning and not really focusing on your text. There might be a million reasons why that individual person in that publishing house who actually physically reads the text you've written doesn't get engaged with it. So publishers aren't infallible beings of endless monetary wisdom. They are just a bunch of people doing stuff, and there might be a million emails coming every day. Look at this thing. So it's very likely just by pure kind of chance reasons that your pitch doesn't really go through. So it's hard to say, but you can probably practice the pitch with your friends. If you get your friends and kind of acquaintances and people in the board game clubs that you probably go through interested, then that's a good sign. But if you don't, then you need to make not necessarily an exceptional game, but different enough to get people interested.
Jouni?
And I agree with Vlaada with the fact that try to get the publisher excited about your game. And does that come from your pitch description of the game, from the game components? There's no one particular thing. And obviously the setting, is it done via email? Are you doing a sort of publisher speed dating that happen in a lot of these game shows, that you get 5 minutes with the publisher and you get to have your table and the game on it? Obviously in that case you probably have a bit more in your pitch about the physical tangible game, because now you have it on the table. So it really differs. But I agree that if the publisher immediately understands, oh, this sounds cool and I can sell this, because they will, if they publish that game, it's with the goal that they need to sell it to somebody. So if you can already give that publisher the same pitch that they can see giving them to the player, it definitely helps. Now, I failed to get my game published via publisher, so my advice might not be the best here. But I do agree that with games, the experience matters a lot. And whenever we buy anything, a lot of the time, the purchase decision is based on your emotion. So try to evoke that emotion with the publisher and make them want to play your game. Because most likely when they hear your pitch the first time, they won't be able to play it. So that initial spark, oh, this sounds really cool. I would like to play this game. I think that's the thing you need to make happen. And it takes practice. It's use your friends and listen to their feedback, and even people you don't know. And even try publishers. Maybe there's a publisher you know that they probably won't publish this, but maybe they will give me valuable feedback, which will allow me to pitch this game to the actual publisher that I want to get this published with. So multiple different ways, but it takes trial and error and practice, and I recommend doing that a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It's very, you learn a lot when you show a game to a publisher, and you can get the feedback directly from the person. I would like maybe some recommendation would be to, one option is to nowadays to do a video. I think many designers do that. They kind of create a short video which kind of explains how the main points of the game and kind of like the selling points, like why this game was made. You can also create like one-pager kind of, which just explains the main goals and perhaps like what's the audience, how long does it take to play the game, and that's kind of convenient for someone to get a good idea like what's the game all about, especially if you approach somebody by email or some other digital ways. But about your question, like how well developed the game should be, or like what should be the state, I had this misconception with many of the German publishers, for example, that they are very much involved in the process of developing the game, like Hans im Glück, and like maybe there are a few of these houses like Ale and Hans im Glück, which take a lot of effort, and I think many do, but like there's most of them, they are working under a lot of pressure, and there's timelines and deadlines, and usually I would maybe like say that it's good to have that the game is really in a good shape already, like you have play tested it completely, and perhaps publishers come with some good kind of thoughts how it can be improved, but you shouldn't expect it. I think it's kind of like extra addition, and by default it should be already like totally polished when you give it to a publisher. But I don't say this is the only way, but I think at least based on my experience, it happened more than often that like actually the publishers didn't do that much on top of the work. But like yeah, it depends.
Yeah, I actually would like to one thought that came from that is it is a fine balance, because you do want to show a ready-to-go product that the publisher can just take and run with. But at the same time, they might want to change something with it. It might be the art, it might be a mechanic, great game, but let's simplify it a bit, because it would, with this art and everything, it would probably work better for this demographic. So also you don't want to be too, especially don't be non-negotiable with your product. If they have a suggestion, don't take this as a personal criticism or get offended or start defending. No, I decided like this because this and that. So be open to feedback, but at the same time, try to have developed enough product that it looks for that, because ideally you can minimize the work for the publisher. So the easier they feel, oh, we can take this and we actually have to do very little work and we can get this published, it's definitely beneficial.
It really depends. If you pitch your game to us, we will spend lots of time working on it, even if it is good. Because if it is good, it can be definitely even better. But we do this work together with the designer, so people that are pitching games to us spend lots of time working on the game. They thought that it's finished. It definitely doesn't. It's not like really important to have final art or icons and everything. Sometimes I think we a bit overdo it. But I have when we were mentioned this like speed dating and publishing and presenting your game in person. I would also like to mention there is one more red flag I didn't mention, and it's when we meet a designer like in SN or on other show, and he has a big box. I say, okay, so I have 4 games to show to you, yeah, and he starts to, and he hopes that something may click. For us, it's really like we feel, okay, this will lead nowhere. If you have some really great game, you probably have 1, yeah, and pick it, do it for us and pick it before we meet, yeah. So that's another advice.
So focus on your number 1 idea.
Yeah, maybe on that. I think that's good advice. But actually, I think I made that mistake a few times. But I think it's very important to recognize what type of games the publishers are interested in, what's their expertise, and try to think about when you approach. Maybe you shouldn't show certain type of game to, like, I don't know, super heavy game for Amigo. I don't know. Like probably they won't publish that. Like it's not part of their DNA to do those type of games.
So publishers have like different genres that they focus on, and different audiences.
Yeah, I think so. And trying to keep that in mind when you approach.
Yeah.
So maybe
Actually, I managed to find a publisher by pitching like 3 games at the same time. But it was not very good publisher in the end, so and he went bankrupt then, and it was experience. Like I never see any reports from my game or something like this, but it was great experience.
So I want to take a little bit step back now that we've heard a little bit about the scary world of publishing, but taking it back to design. So we've heard a little bit like iteration and putting too many features into a game. So can you all tell us a little bit about your process of, before you take it to a publisher, how do you actually go about designing a board game? So maybe let's start from, actually Jouni, let's start with you. So let's shake up the order.
Oh, wow. I was hoping to have a minute to think about this, but no worries. I have a couple of ideas here. What is your process for designing a game? This is a big and loaded question, and for every game it might be different. Sometimes the process might just start from you see a cool component. This has happened to me several times at a game show where you go to a manufacturer booth, so that the actual factory who produces these games, and they have samples of different stuff that they have. So sometimes you just see something so cool on that booth that you already kind of like start having ideas from the components alone. So it's always different where the process starts. But I'm just going to highlight one thing for the designing a board game. I would say it's the kill your darlings sort of thing, and this comes from my personal experience. Especially when it was our first game, we had a ton of ideas for that game and we included a lot of them. And even when we thought that, well, we already left out 15 things, there could have probably been 10 more things that we could have left out and just focus on one thing. In this case, it was the rotating board, and just put all our effort to let's make everything about this game. It's the rotating board, and whenever it rotates, how that changes the game. So it's difficult to do that when you think that you have 5 good ideas on a game and you really want to do them all. So kill your darlings is my kind of number 1 tip in the end, that when you polish the game, leave everything, no matter if it's cool, but if it's not essentially bringing something to that gaming experience, maybe leave it for another game. And as a bonus is just playtest, and listen to your players. Don't think that their feedback is wrong. Customer is always right. So whatever their experience about your game was, listen to it and try to figure out how to improve it.
Okay, let's then take it to Touko.
Yeah, so I think everybody is a bit different, and their processes are different, so I can kind of tell you mine, but maybe it doesn't work for you. So I like to keep the ideas, like I have these type of notebooks everywhere, and I just write stuff down, and some of them kind of keep on coming back to me, and I kind of return back to those ideas, and but for sure I won't work on all of the ideas I've kind of thought about, try to already at that stage try to pick some of the best ideas and put the effort to build a prototype, and I really like not to, for example, write the rules until very end of the development. First, just prototype it in your head as long as possible, pick only the ideas that you feel are the most promising, that kind of actually might work and might produce some kind of new experience for the players. And then when you build the prototype, of course, it might make sense not to build the full game, but perhaps build part of it and test it out. Does it feel actually fun to play this card? Does it actually feel fun to do this part? And then feel the kind of physicality of I think that's always the hardest when you have some ideas and you are not quite sure how it will play out physically when you are actually playing it. Is it fun? You can think in your head that it's kind of cool to do this and that, but it could be totally impossible for the players, for example, to understand all the information on the cards or something like that. And it's very hard to prototype that just in your head. And I think some of these things need to be tested out on actual physical prototypes. But then once you build the prototypes, playtest them with your friends, playtest them with strangers, be brutal about them, but also at some point have the resilience to push forward when you feel not listen to every feedback that you get, but try to trust yourselves, but be open about the feedback. And yeah.
Okay, let's shake up the order again. Vlaada, what's your process?
I
saw you relaxing and I jumped on it.
Well, I have a bit maybe different process because I know a person that is very critical about games, and if that person doesn't like my game, then that I will never proceed, and that person is me. Yeah, so usually when I am developing a game, it's me who kills the game. Even if some of my friends and colleagues like it, if I think it's not good enough and not good enough to spend next year working on it and so on, so I decide to stop it and do something different, because doing something different is something that I enjoy a lot. But as for the ideas, for me, it's I have a database of ideas somewhere here, and I am just thinking about them in downtime whenever I feel that I need to I need to think about games. And I combine them in my mind, various themes and various mechanics, and and sometimes some items click together, and then I think more about it, and I'm trying to imagine the game. I'm trying to imagine the player experience, what they would feel, what they would enjoy on the game, and then at some point I make another directory in my board game ideas directory, and probably create an Excel file, and I start to write down these things. And some ideas don't survive this step, yeah, because it may look in your head, it may look like very interesting, but you are imagining, okay, there will be cards that do this, and then you try to write actual cards, and it shows that they are too complicated or too same or not as exciting as you imagined. But if it survives this Excel file, for me, then I start to organizing stuff, and I start to create a virtual prototype from this, because Excel is like intelligent, organized piece of paper, yeah? You can export it then and import it to some other program and start. Now I'm starting to use Google Docs and Google Sheets, but still it's similar. And from the ideas document starts to be like first a prototype document, like seamlessly. At some moment, I probably rename it from ideas to data, but still. And then I create virtual prototype for myself, just to play with, just to play against myself. Just drag and drop, because I'm programmer by my profession and former also video game designer, and so this is natural for me. Much more natural to spend like 3 days programming than 1 hour scissoring cards. Yeah. So I do this prototype, and it's very durable then. Yeah, you can update it very quickly then, because when you have this process and you change one number and click export button and run the game, then you have a new card there without even getting off your chair. So that's great. So I play this, and if it is good, if it feels good, and some rules and mechanics get fixed, then I start to program, because I'm lazy, as most programmers are lazy. So I program. So at the start of the turn, I draw automatically cards and replenish some offer, or get some. If I hit this button, then I move some tokens and so on, and I end up with half of automatic or automatic game, and no one else seen this game yet. Yeah, I was just still playing it myself, and I have to love it. And if I had a game that I really liked and my friends liked, and I got bored with this game after like 30 or 40 games, so I decided to not continue. Yeah. I have to like the games even for 50 or 100th time when I am, because I will spend lots of time with it, playtesting it, fine-tuning it, and and when I'm really happy, then I say, okay, this is basic version of the game. I will improve and add stuff later, and I print it, bring it to players, and they see what they do. And I usually cut things off the game because it's usually too complex or too long or too big. But yeah, so far I am lucky that when something that I really liked and enjoyed, that my friends enjoyed too. So then of course I listen to feedback to particular things. But as I said, there's much more games that my friends would probably like to be published, but me not, and then vice versa.
Okay, let's also hear from Samuli.
Right. I worked with a creative director in the first company that I worked with, and a lot of the games that I have made have been other people's ideas. And it's a very good way to kind of, in my own head, structure the kind of game project, which is to have a separate creative director that's kind of separate from you as the designer. And the creative director has a feel that the game should impart upon the players. And the most difficult part is conceptualizing and understanding that feel, what the player should feel in the game, what kind of emotions, what kind of dynamic does the game create that the player will then kind of go through. Because it's one way to differentiate your game, because a lot of games kind of, to me, taste the same, regardless of what their kind of actual mechanics are. So if you can kind of get the different taste identified what you want, then you have something to work towards, and then it's just kind of applying different mechanics, how to build towards this sort of idea, and then it's a mechanic. Does it does it kind of contribute to the idea? If not, discard it. If yes, keep it. And that helps also with the kill your darlings aspect of the thing, because the taste is probably something that isn't good or bad. It's just the taste, and some people like it, some people don't. and it's how the game accomplishes that taste is what the game's kind of function is. So if you play test it and the players don't seem to get the taste, get the idea, get the feel, then you know that you need to change something, but it's kind of a neutral thing. You just kind of need to do something different. And that's how kind of I like to work. Differentiate between what the game kind of should impart and what the game actually does. And all the mechanics and kind of different tidbits of the game all can be changed. And yeah, as I said, the difficult part is grasping that idea into a form that you could type it out or explain it to another player and give another player, God damn it, other person, other designer, and then they could do their work to complete that idea. So that's kind of my process.
Yeah, one thought that I came to me from that, I've on a couple of games I've done the mistake that I made the prototype too good. Like I invested too much time to create the graphics and everything to be very cool, and then you're emotionally attached. You already know that you spent so much time on it, so it's very difficult to then, even if those parts of the game should be changed, you kind of feel like in love with them. No, I want to keep them because I already worked so much on them, which might not be the best solution for to get the best possible game in the end. So be wary of that, and you can even try out different. You just heard different processes how people build games. So obviously you can find the way that works for you, but I very easily, I have to remind myself constantly that don't start building like a ready-to-go thing, and this doesn't even apply only to board games, but like do a quick prototype and test it out before you kind of invest too much into it, because then it kind of, you're attached to it, and it's difficult to kill your darlings when it comes to, if you need to.
Yeah, this has been really fascinating. Again, as mentioned before, your process might be different. So whatever it takes to get that idea into a shape that can be played by others. And I think that is the key moment that I've noticed, that what is cool to me or understandable to me might not be understandable to others. So however long it takes to get it out of here into something playable, and then playtest. So again, your mileage may differ. But aside from all these tips that we've already heard, do you have one more, like number one tip for upcoming designers, or number one misconception you'd like to, dissolve at this point that could be added on top of all of these process tips that we already heard?
I have one tip: don't listen to us too much, because I have said, for example, lots of things of how I'm doing games and how to pitch them or anything, but nothing of this applies to code names, and that was my biggest hit. The only thing that applies to code names is what you said, that's luck. Yeah, I found this idea and it was good, but it was there, and it was like for anyone to find and pick it, and it worked. And yeah, it was like a few hours of work, and then a big success. So yeah, that's my advice. Do it the way you feel. It's great, as I said, because you will have great time with it, and maybe you will have this luck, or yeah, we'll see.
Do listen to this tip. Play games. Play as many games and as different games and everything as possible, because that way you can build a library of games and mechanics and things and concepts and ideas in your mind that you can then apply to whatever you are doing. So it's play games. Play especially games that seem interesting, even if they don't feel good, because I think bad games can teach you a lot, probably even more than what good games can, because bad games very clearly illustrate what doesn't work. And also look at yourself playing a game. When you're playing a game, observe yourself and ask, why are you feeling this? Why are you feeling what you're feeling right now? And that's probably a good advice for everything. Observe yourself. Do some introspection.
Yeah, because I'd like to add that everyone on this panel me included, are professional game designers in one form or another. So we already have, from our day jobs, quite a big library of design knowledge to draw on. And if you don't do that as your day job, you are going to need to maybe build that knowledge on your own. So whenever you're playing a game, think about, why do you like a feature? Why you don't like a feature? Why does something feel bad? Why does something feel good? And add that to your library of kind of like things you know about games. So kind of like if you can't think about games critically, that's the way you build that knowledge. You think about why those games make you feel the way they do. That was my addition. Let's keep going with the panelists.
All right. Well, I would agree with these previous notes here. I think, well, when I started, a lot of people were jokingly in the board game industry telling me that if you want to make money, don't get into board games. And I would probably give you this same tip. But also that it is a lot of fun. And if you love it, definitely do it. And you might be lucky as Samuli or Vlaada with Codenames, or is Eclipse your big hit? I assume so. So I haven't been lucky in that sense, but I have still enjoyed every single game that I designed. So don't go into it hoping to basically winning the lottery and winning the Spiel des Jahres and all these big awards or becoming famous with your game. But if you love doing it, the more you do it, the better at it you come. And one thing I can say for sure, that whatever is the most successful game for each of us that we ever designed, it wasn't the first game that we did. So like everything in life, you get better at it. But I really liked your play games and what Vlaada mentioned earlier, that it's a red flag if people are too protective. Like, well, I'm not going to reveal you everything because I don't want, this is a new thing that I designed. I kind of decided a year ago that there are no new ideas. Like everything, all mechanics, everything has been done already. And typically a good game is just a good combination of theme and mechanics, and they support each other, and it's a good design. But yeah, I would say that don't be worried at all that somebody would steal your idea and run with it. I think it's very unlikely that happens in our industry.
I would like to make one clarification. I am not lucky. I am one catastrophe away from financial ruin. I have already spent all my unemployment benefits, probably for a lot of years. And yeah, I am not the lucky one in this table. And that's a reality that you probably need to live with if you want to pursue this profession.
Yeah, don't make this your job if you can avoid it.
And you're still considered a successful game designer.
That is a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, there's this famous saying that if you want to make a small fortune in board games, start with a big fortune. But I want to say, like, there's actually, like, if you know Gloomhaven, #1 game, I think the guy who made it, he made the Kickstarter campaign by himself and everything pretty much himself. I think it was his first game or something like that. He broke all the rules we are saying here and everything, and it's #1 game in Board Game Geek. So, like, yeah, I think find your way. I guess that's the main. But I have one tip I want to give you actually, and it's pretty much what you said as well. I think game design is something that you learn by doing, and that's the only way to really learn it. And so, like, doing stuff and failing and doing it again and failing. And I think there's like few of these. So like a good coach, of course, should give coaching that is kind of meaningful for the person. Like, so I think like different people would need different type of tips. For some people, I would say be persistent on your designs in a sense that you should continue. I think some people just start working on something and then they drop it out and they take a new one and they never finish anything. Basically, they just always start a new project. And so other people, they just keep on focusing on one project and then endlessly work on that and again and never start a new game. I think and that depends on like what. I think it's good to be somewhere in the middle in average, because like that way you will start many projects. Most of them will fail, but you will learn from them. But whenever you get a good thing going on, you should still keep on pushing against the the challenges, and I think this is the hardest part, to find like where you should be and how persistent you should be with your projects, which ones you should kill and which ones you should continue. But on this scale, I would always still lean on killing a lot, trying a lot of new things, because that way you learn, and in the long run you will be a better designer and hopefully get benefits out of that.
Yeah, so this already sounded like the end of the panel, but we still got 45 minutes to go. Surprise! So we're going to switch gears a little bit from game design and talk about kind of like the industry and the past and the future. And then, don't worry, we'll leave plenty of time for audience questions. So if they didn't answer that burning question you have in your mind, just keep that waiting for just 2 more questions. So kind of like board games have been around for a long time, but kind of like throughout your careers, how has board game design evolved over the years? So we've had the addition of internet, the addition of Kickstarter, crowdfunding. How do you see kind of like what worked in the past that doesn't work nowadays anymore? Or maybe there are some things that are eternal.
I'm happy to start because I have 2 ideas, and this way I get to be the first one to say them. I'll actually focus on one. I think we can all agree that games are better than ever before, and there's a long history of game design, and basically I think it was like Magic the Gathering and Catan that sort of started one of the first games in the era of modern board games, and the whole new ideas that we even got to games like cooperative games, and maybe there's doesn't need to be a certain winner and loser in a game, and maybe the experience can be something else than just who gets the most wealth or whatever it is in the game. And modern technology has brought a lot of tools for us, like endless spreadsheets where we balance our game and make sure that no one card or one die roll can be like a too powerful or too weak in the game. So with all these tools and with all the history, and now we have the blogs and the books and everything that we can actually read about this subject, there's just so much knowledge that the games are better than ever before, and I think this is the major difference to Game of Life or Monopoly or these games Trouble that have been around for or Kimble in Finland that have been around for a long time. So it definitely has evolved a lot.
Definitely I agree. I think games are now better than ever. I would say I think there's been somehow, of course, when the Euro games were becoming popular, I think that kind of opened up the gaming again, board gaming for many people, and all of these tidy, elegant mechanics, and keeping sure that players are not wasting their time. Every second in their game means something. There's meaningful decision. There's not a runaway leader. All of these balanced gameplay, elegance type thing. I think those have improved a lot. But I would like to think that it has already happened quite a bit. Is that the theme becomes more integrated with the mechanics, and I think we've seen a lot of the recent successes, like Gloomhaven. I think it's a good example of these games which marries the theme and setting and the mechanics well together. And I'm kind of hoping that will continue in the future as well. I think there's been a big change in the production values of games and the kind of what we can do in physical physical production way. I hope that will continue as well. But I think all of that, marrying the theme and the mechanics, I think that's something has happened, but I hope will still keep on happening.
Yeah, we've had the kind of bourgeoising of board games like Gloomhaven and other games that are 30 kilos. That wouldn't have happened in the era of family board games like Monopoly and Kibble. Huge. These will kill a small child if they fall on them. That's not very family friendly. Vlaada, Samuli, do you have any ideas on kind of this evolution?
Well, for me, maybe it will sound heretically, but it doesn't change that much. There are still great games that are great till today. And, when I started 20, 25 years ago, actually, I played more games than these days when I have family and lots of other things to care about. And, it's what definitely changes is the you know, the market is full of great games. Yeah, there was, but it's not that much more because you can still play only that many games because you don't have time. Yeah, you rent more time than 24 hours per day. So so there's you can still learn from playing games, but you know, and there are new ideas and new concepts, but the process itself is not that much different because it is still about spending your time thinking, imagining the game, and so on. And there are new concepts. There's deck building, there is legacy games, and so on. So it definitely evolves, and there will be probably more types of games in the future. But as I've said, the process itself for me looks similar, just using different data. Yeah.
What about Samuli? We'll let you, Vlaada, get back to it if you had something.
Yeah, I think people probably change more than kind of board game design itself. I think with the advent of new kind of packaged ideas like deck building and legacy games and stuff like that, and there being more board games out there, I think one thing is that people are starting to maybe, don't know, this is just my conjecture, being open to different sorts of game experiences. Like, for example, I think a idea of a legacy game where you destroy game components would have been very curious a couple of decades ago, but now it's kind of normal. And I think that's one very positive thing, that you don't need to kind of attack the entire market if we're being cynical capitalists about things. You just need to find the people who would appreciate your game, and that's probably been demonstrated by Kickstarter and other ways. Well, Kickstarter and the internet, where you can find out new interesting games and also find audience for your interesting games. So you don't need to go through what the publisher thinks. Is this going to sell to the faceless mass of people? You probably can kind of try to think, is this going to sell to people who like 80s style war games or kind of something like that? So I think that's probably the biggest change.
You can find your niche.
Yes.
Yeah. So I promised that we talked about Kickstarter, and this is kind of like my segue into it. So is it still worth doing a Kickstarter? Or actually, let me rephrase that. Who is it worth for, or who should make a Kickstarter? What kind of person, or what kind of team even? Like, what should you be prepared for if you want to try doing your game the Kickstarter way?
Well, I can start. Being the cynic I am, if you make good miniatures and good scenery, then you should do a Kickstarter. Because a person in the game project that I'm participating in said at some point that with a Kickstarter project, the game can be whatever. The people who have the capital to participate in Kickstarter are probably going to want something good to look at, and miniatures are an easy way to do it. And then you just kind of buy the game, forget that it exists, then at some point it comes to your door, you take a look at it, realize that you're busy with all the other Kickstarter games that you've backed, and never get to play it, so it's irrelevant what the game is, as long as the miniatures are good enough to get you to pledge to it.
Harsh but fair.
As I've said, many things that we are saying here
Pinch
are
of salt.
not general advice. You know, I believe you can do Kickstarter if you if you are as a person are exceptionally like persistent, and if you have a great vision, and if you may try it, yeah. If Isaac, who made Gloomhaven, would listen to our advices, maybe he would not go to make Gloomhaven, and it would be a big shame, yeah. So because you know, but as Touko said, he's like exceptional in terms of how much work he was able to do just himself, yeah, and how great it turned out, yeah. So and Kickstarter is here for these people, for people with a vision. But you know, it's hard to tell if your vision is really a great vision. So to give chance to these people, that's definitely a good platform. But now it's kind of like overflown by people who can do great miniatures. So so it's hard to find these ideas, but still because now it's like it lost part of its original meaning. Yeah, it's now a form of marketing. Even big companies are using it. Yeah, companies that could afford to do it without Kickstarter, but they can do great miniatures. So it's if you have something that people think that they want, that's probably good. And if you have great vision and really great dedication, you need great dedication. And I have seen several projects that would never happen without Kickstarter, and they definitely are worth it.
I agree with the previous, and for me, what I sometimes hear people think is that Kickstarter. So this is maybe a misconception. Maybe it's not for anybody here, but I just want to kind of state it that if you do a Kickstarter for a game, you're still basically self-publishing the game most likely. So you're just selling the game ennakkomyyntivision, pre-sales basically. So you're just taking the money from the people to have the money to actually print the game. Kickstarter has been phenomenal for the board gaming industry, and it has brought us many really good games. And especially in the beginning of Kickstarter, 2011, 2012, it was possible to have a half-finished game with some art and a good idea, an interesting idea, and get a very successful campaign out of it. But it has become an art, and there are books and lectures and blogs and a lot of things out there about Kickstarter campaigns. So one thing I would say, if you want to try it out, it's definitely interesting. I've been involved in several crowdfunding campaigns, 2 of them for our product, Diced. It is interesting, and I was lucky that we had a team of doing the campaign. But the one thing I really learned about it, that it's not a thing that you just put it out there and hope for the best. It's very active work, and hopefully you can dedicate 6 months for it to grow your audience and build your campaign even before you launch it. And then it's 1 month of just not even sleeping and just running your campaign, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however long you want to run it. So it's a lot of work. And after that, the work really starts. And then suddenly you might have hundreds or thousands of people who are now expecting things from you, and for you to work hard to get them their product. So definitely do your homework before you do a Kickstarter. It's a great way to find your game and build an audience for it. But in very few occasions, or I would even say that in no occasions, it's somebody got lucky. They are creative people who did a lot of work to make these campaigns happen. And very often the successful campaign was not their first campaign. Like we easily look at the Frosthaven campaign, they made 13 million or whatever they made with it. But Isaac's first campaign for the Gloomhaven was less than $400,000. Still a massively big Kickstarter campaign, but it's not like he just put an idea out there and it made 13 million immediately. He worked on it several years.
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to add on here. I think the space has I'm not an expert on Kickstarter, to be honest, but like I think the space has been more crowded and it's much harder nowadays. So I think some of the successes have already have an audience when they in some way to tap to some audience, existing audience, and it's hard to build their own community from scratch, but it can be done if but it just needs a lot of work and probably a lot of help from others and so on. So it's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
I kind of like that Touko gave a new meaning for crowdfunding. so
Yes.
crowded funding.
Yes. So I said I'd ask 2 questions. I lied. 3. Lightning round. So I promised you that I'd ask you about future trends, but I thought that's actually boring. And I thought I'd rather ask you what kind of game or game about what would you like to see in the future? I'll start so you have some time to think. So I would like to see more games that actually go for a really hard emotion or maybe even kind of like an experience that doesn't have maybe even a win condition. So if you haven't heard, I highly recommend that you look up Brenda Romero's Train, which is about Holocaust. Harsh, but I think we could make also board games that are emotional experiences, the same way tabletops and LARPs deal with heavy emotions. So I'd like to see more games like that. But they're not, of course, very sellable, but maybe someone could make a sellable emotional game.
Okay, so when I want to know want some game to exist that it doesn't exist, then
Yet.
I either made it or I'm working on it. So
Or more
yeah.
kinds of some kind of game that you want to see.
But yeah, so I will not tell you anything interesting now because maybe I'm working on something I want to do, and I already did some stuff that I wanted to do.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar answer to it, that there are so many different kinds of games that I would be interested in seeing. There's so many games I feel could benefit from another iteration that I would like to see. But I also would like, I would like to play, I'm probably gonna think about how to construct it, but a game about modern election systems and how difficult it is to achieve meaningful change with just kind of parliamentary election systems. Have players start from completely different power levels and kind of illustrate some political truths to play people with a board game medium, how difficult everything is, how difficult it is to win against an opponent who has 99% of the resources as the rest of you. Not thinking about any specific political concepts here, but
this comes from my personal sort of preference for games. I would really like to play more of story-driven cooperative games. Very close to role-playing games. Yes, there's somebody designing one right there. This is why I'm bringing it up. Please do games like this because I want to play them. I'm very competitive, and what it leads to often when I play a board game where there's one winner, typically the one who gets most points, I don't enjoy losing a game, but also I don't enjoy winning. I end up feeling bad in any case. So I really like a cooperative game, and especially somehow story-driven, because it's for me, lots of games, they when you play them multiple times, it's kind of like, okay, I've kind of the cool mechanic, but I've seen it so many times and it's not going to offer me anything new. That's why I kind of like story-driven games. And I will even give one tip. Paleo is a very good game like this. I enjoyed a lot. And I'm getting the expansion very soon. I'm currently very excited about that. But yeah, story-driven cooperative games. Let me know when you publish them.
Yeah, Paleo is great. Just played it with our family actually a few days ago. Yeah, I like theme married with good mechanics. So I would like to see more of those type of games being. And I think we see more and more of those. Well, I won't pick any particular game type or like a team or anything, but I think there is my fear is that the industry is moving more and more to these kind of complicated games. So I think it's very natural. Like when people want to play games, they want to feel they want to learn. I think there's a good like ideas about like the games are all about mastery. Like you want to learn and learn the systems and be better and so on. So I think it's very natural when people play more and more games. Let's say hardcore gamers, they just like experience more and more the same stuff. They are less tolerant of if they see a game that it's kind of too simplistic of knife, or they already believe they know how to play this game when they see it. Like then they are very they can be not so positive about the game.
And that's how we end up with the 30-kilo child killers.
Yes. So then what people react to that is that they start building more and more complicated games. So that because the worst thing the game is that it's kind of trivial, and no one wants to make a trivial game. So they just pile more and more rules into the game and make it more and more complicated. It's not actually like a really good design. It's just like piled up, like a lot of rules piled up together. So I'm hoping that like more and more games would be kind of cleaner. They would have the depth, but like the rules would be cleaner, setup would be easy, short playtime. But like my worry would be that if we go to the other route, which is just more and more complicated games. I think there's beautiful, long and great, like super epic games out there. I'm not saying that, but in general, I'm afraid that if all of the games would become like that, I think we need the family games and we need the deep, fast experiences as well.
Now you'll be happy to know that this is the full size of my rules set for Goblins and Gunpowder coming out, who knows when.
I just want to mention, I remembered from that our chief technical officer is our system administrator, programmer, really likes complex things. I told him about Eclipse like years ago, and he was very interested in it because he did not understand the game from my explanation, and that made it very curious to him, like, oh, I don't get it, so I'm super interested in the game. But it wasn't because of your game, it was my bad explanation of the game.
And on that note, we've finished the official me asking questions part, and we now open the floor to the audience. And I'm going to need to take that box away from you. So those burning questions you had earlier, I will need you now to summon them.
Hello? Kuulu? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, so I assume that I'll be speaking in English. Do you mind if I have a two-parter?
Go for it.
One-
I didn't see a sea of hands, so.
Okay, well, one a little more complicated, one a little more simpler. First one is that, well, I'm not a super hardcore board gamer, but I really enjoy them because of their whole kind of like causality effects. So it has come to my attention that a lot of rule books, and don't hate me too much if you don't disagree, I think a lot of rule books kind of suck ass. Like a lot of them just don't know how to describe the game, and I'm just wondering, how do you guys approach rule book design? Do you think it's more entwined with the whole creative process and going maybe from start of the design, or maybe it's something that you do more in the kind of like the post-production, maybe something with the publishers? Because it seems to me that a lot of kind of like the be-all and end-all of the design should be entwined with the entire rule book, and how do you explain that your gameplay experience to the player? And do you want to answer now, or should I now just give the second question?
Let's start with that one. So if I see a sea of hands, we'll come back to the simple
Okay.
question later. But let's start with rule book design.
Okay, I have nothing too much to say because our rule books don't suck. So
Okay, dude. Yeah.
but
Let me read it.
But we put lots of effort to it, and as for my games, rulebook is the last thing I am doing. I'm working on, and it just reflects all the experience I had over the last year explaining the game, seeing the reactions, seeing what people are enjoying. Also, the humor in a rulebook is usually because to not get bored, I add jokes when explaining the game, and then I put them also to the rulebook. The ways how to play the first game, if it is different, if it is too complex. Yeah, it's all part of the development, and in the end, and when I mean end, it means like 1 week before SN, we spent like 6 nights in a row polishing everything, every little picture and icon and so on. And that's my process of creating a rulebook, and it worked so far.
Okay, so now we don't need to go in order. So whoever has most to say about rulebook design.
There's one microphone, so it makes sense to
Yeah, okay, yeah. But just feel free to mix it up. If you don't have anything to say, feel free to pass so we get more time for questions.
Yeah, I steal. So Fantasy Flight Games, I feel, has acceptable rulebook concept, which is learn to play and then rules reference. And I'm also boring, so I like both to be as dry as possible. And the reference booklet is amazing because it's easy to refer to during game, and the rules explanation can be a little bit, to learn to play can be a little bit more loose. But yeah, that's my plan.
Yeah, we need to remember that rule books they're really difficult to make because you have two purposes for this one manual you're doing. You're trying to teach the game for the player, and also the same manual needs to act as a reference whenever you need to look into it, and that's what Fantasy Flight has done. They have something that gets you going with the game, and then something that answers you every question. I do have to mention here that when we started our company, we always wanted to do something digital in the board game industry, and we pitched all sorts of ideas for board game publishers. One of them was interactive tutorial, and this was so interesting to every single board game publisher that we talked to that we decided to forget creating board games for now and just focus on creating interactive tutorials that teach you the game, and then digital rules that answer you every single game question. So it's a big challenge, and one of the major challenges for a publisher to sell their product, they need to be able to essentially program that game engine into your head so you can actually use that product. And board games, it's an entertainment product, most and foremost. So making sure that you play the game with the correct rules is really important for the publisher, because if you enjoy the game, you're going to tell your friends about it, and they will also buy that game. So creating rule books is definitely a big challenge, and the reason why many of them suck is it's a difficult thing to do, and also maybe because it's always the last thing to do, and it's very often game needs to go into print because we need to get it out before Spiel, the show that happens in Essen. It needs to go out today, okay, and then somebody stays up until 5 a.m. to make sure that everything is done correctly, and then a few days later you might realize that, oh, yeah, we forgot to mention this one important rule set, but hey, let's put it on Board Game Geek, maybe people will find it from there. So it's a difficult product to update as well, and hopefully we can help with that. But I agree that a rulebook is a big challenge for a product like this.
Just super quickly, Vlaada's rulebooks are the best, so I totally agree. Yes, you are the best one to give tips. It is. Yeah, I guess like one reason why they might suck in general rulebooks, which are super important, is that it is something that can kind of stay between kind of the publisher and the designer. Like no one is really owning it, and no one is really making sure it's perfect in some cases. And I think it shows a lot from the publisher side as well, if the rulebook is always excellent, because it means that the publisher is working to get everything in the game to be excellent, and that's what is needed. Like everything should be excellent, and that's super important.
And I guess we also arrived at this time when we have like YouTube channels that are like dedicated to board gaming, and we kind of hope that either we put up a video tutorial on YouTube ourselves, or we get one of these YouTube channels to actually make the tutorial, explain the game for others. So maybe there's also been the addition of internet that kind of makes it like, maybe we don't focus so much on the printed manual and hope that players kind of like find these influencers that explain because videos are usually way more engaging way to learn.
Well, it depends. I'm a person who prefers reading, so but now more and more. But I wanted to mention one interesting fact. I'm really glad that Board Game Geek fixed the algorithms, because several years ago, like 10 years ago, the games with the worst rule books were highest in the hotness, because there were discussions about rules, about every rule, like dozens of questions, yeah. Yeah, and then you see it, and then you publish a game, and then someone writes, it feels like nice and cozy that there are no rules question. Yeah, and the game is down in the hotness because there is no discussions. Now they don't count rules discussions towards hotness. So yeah.
Board Game Geek drama. I actually just before this panel, I ran my very first game test where I just gave the leaflet to 2 players and then had to do the painful designer thing of sit down, shut up, and don't tell them where they went wrong. It's a painful experience. I recommend it to everyone who wants to do this for any kind of living or hobby. So since I don't see people clamoring to kill me, you get to have a simple question.
Okay, sorry guys. I'll make sure to pass it along. But yes, firstly, I'm sorry for berating you. I don't mean to make you feel bad. I do work in the industry, so I know what a grueling experience those things.
No, we're here for the spicy takes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, so second question is a little more simple, and one of you mentioned it, is the use of tabletop simulator, which I feel like is an excellent tool in teaching and in prototyping and all that whole modding scenario thing. So how do you feel about tabletop simulator or using similar kinds of products to prototype or maybe send to publishers or developers like yourselves, and furthermore from that, maybe even just exclusively publish for those kinds of platforms?
So I forgot who mentioned the tabletop simulator, but announce yourselves and start there.
Yeah, if you happen to be a person who lives in the middle of the woods and there's like 3 people around, getting playtesters is typically kind of difficult. So tabletop simulator is an exceedingly good tool for that. There are a lot of peer playtesting groups where you on the internet. VPT, I think I mentioned, is one, and those are a very good source of fresh eyes to your games. And VPT is an invaluable tool. The tabletop simulators and similar apps are very good for that. So pick one, learn how it works, and you're not going to be not going to be sorry about it.
So what was PPT? What does it stand for?
Virtual playtesting. It's a Discord server full of people.
VPT. Yes.
I'll mention Tabletopia. It's one of the other platforms as well, but it's definitely a good tangible way to show how your game kind of looks like, how the components will look like, without having to spend a lot of money building a good looking prototype, and it's a lot easier to distribute. And I know that several publishers have even, like if you look at the, for example, the back of the box on Scythe, the 3D render of the game that they have, there is actually a screenshot from Tabletopia.
I haven't used. I should use, but I haven't had time to learn them yet. But I think they could be. Sounds like they are super powerful.
I have already told you that our current game we are publishing right now was pitched to us using tabletop simulator. So, especially in the COVID era, it was growing a lot, and many people learned how to use it. And I am not using tabletop simulator because as a programmer I have better ways how to playtest stuff. But even me, when trying to show some work on progress to one publisher, I used it, and it works. It helps the publisher to imagine how the game will play. So I think it has its meaning.
Okay, so there, question. The man in the orange shirt. Let's not kill the projector. Fortunately, it's soft.
No worries, thank you. Thank you very
if we
much.
have the
Thank you.
program runner, please come up here, yes, and you can handle the mic transportation for the next one. Thank you for your questions. I
have a question about designing games for kids or for fathers of small children like me, who have, well, the fathers are often the customer, right, paying for the product. I'm interested in basically two things: playing games with my children that they enjoy and that I enjoy, which is a very, like, they might be 5 years old. And the other is how do I teach my kids to play games? Like, what games should I teach them to get them up to speed to play Mage Knight with me? So obviously, you can't just go by your own gut feeling, because you're designing for children who are different in some ways. Or would you design such games for children? And if then how? Like, what are your ideas?
So is the question, how does the design differ when you design for kids?
Yeah, and like if you would ever design a game specifically for kids under 12 or 10 or something. Thank you.
So I have designed a game for kids, and my approach was don't treat them too much as kids. Yeah, you know, that's something that Rowling with Harry Potter, and it works. And yeah, so but with a game it's different. I made a game according to Czech most famous comic book with some animals for children. Really, it's like here for when I was growing, it was there, and I enjoyed it. And I created a cooperative game because it's about 4 characters that cooperate always, and it has what proper children game has to have. According to me, that means time travel and armies, medieval armies chasing them, and some treasures to find, and so on. And my experience is that the kids like it, and their parents hate it because they need to read rules of. The rules make sense. That's another important thing. That all is thematic. There's not too much abstraction. But yeah, so this is my approach. Probably not a good advice, but I enjoyed it, and there are kids that enjoyed it, and they are closer to play Mage Knight than.
I would also probably imagine that you don't want to make too many tiny components that can be easily lost or swallowed.
Children confuse and scare me, so I don't design for them.
I found myself there's some kids games that I even enjoy playing, and this is probably my tip for designing kids game, that if you can design a game that even adults enjoy, it's probably a good starting point. Oftentimes adults just play like we do as drinking games, but they they still work really great for that. One recommendation here: Wonder Book by DV Games. It's a very cool pop-up book sort of game. You open up the book and a tree pops up, and that's the game board, and you cooperatively go through this mission of 6 chapters of World with Dragons and Magic. It's really cool. But I'm currently playing that game with no kids around the table because I enjoy it as well. So that's for the first question. And to your second question about the Mage, I would say find other people, because you know what's going to happen. They're not going to be, they don't want to play that game in the end with you anyway 5 years later. So make sure that you can play today and find people from this room. Who here likes is Mage Knight? There you go. you have a couple of full groups there already. So I would recommend play rather sooner than later.
Okay, quick addition from Touko if you have any, so we have time for one more question.
Yeah, just quick. I've done one kids game. I don't know if there's any special rule. I played with kids, and
what is the name of the kids game you made?
It's only in Finnish. It's actually a similar-ish story than it's Summa Mutikka World, which is by VSOU, but it's not so famous probably than the Czech one. But Children's World that's used here, they asked me to do a board game in that kind of for them, and so it's called Yhtä juhlaa kadonnutta sankaria etsimässä or something like that. But anyways,
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, even though you have kids. But yeah, if you have more questions, you attack Touko after this. So we have time for one more question, if it's... Okay, I want to give it to the lady in the armor.
What is your favorite board?
Please give it to the box so everyone can hear it.
What is your favorite board game?
Ooh. If I would need to pick only one, I would pick Race for the Galaxy.
I got excited for a second because our game is called Race to the North Pole, but so close. This is something that varies sometimes even by day. Currently, it's Paleo.
Same answer. There is not just a single game. There are so many, but Spirit Island is something that I physically cannot stop playing.
Well, I could go long and long, but because what I really love is variety of games, and I have there are of course better games and like mediocre and so on, but in each genre, in each type of game, I have like 5 or maybe 10 good titles, and like having like second and third place is better than the first place if combined, because I just love to play. I never play the same game again and again as some players do. So I will not give you a particular name because yeah.
I'll give you a particular name, but it's not. Well, it's an ancient game called Go. Just the simplicity and the complexity that comes out of the simple rules is my favorite. I can play that forever. We have 1 minute, so if you have a very quick question, you can get it in. Very quick question over there.
I'm going to actually update my answer because Spirit Island is very popular and obvious. New Angeles. It's a game that I cannot play very often because I get so angry at everything while I play it. But I feel that it's a very important game. So if you ever have the chance to play New Angeles, do it.
Okay, quick question.
Yes, hello. We were talking about prototyping before with the digital tools. Do you have a certain tool for making physical prototypes, for quick prototyping maybe? Do you have your favorite program that you can make 1 billion cards out of like in 2 minutes? Do you have like a favorite program for?
And very quick answers.
Well, okay, my virtual prototype. When I hit one button and it creates sheets for printing. So I am using the same tool, and yeah, then someone needs to cut it, but and that's it.
OpenOffice Writer, just spam the frame tool and you can make cards very easily.
Yeah, I think my favorite tool is just spreadsheets. Everything else is just pen and scissors and a printer.
Yeah, I would love to use tools like Vlaada is using. One day I will learn Nandeck or something like that. I think there's plenty of these tools, but for me it's kind of Excel and Photoshop and yeah, nothing too fancy.
And I'll add one way to just make more out of your cards is to laminate them and then write on whiteboard markers. So you can, especially if it's just numbers that you need to update much faster that way.
One tip, by the way, A4 plain stickers. Like that's if you are not using, that's the best tool for game designers. Like just plain, like a sheet that you can put on a cardboard and then cut it. If you're making tiles or something like that. Yeah.
Sticker paper, yes.
Sticker paper.
Yes.
You can get it on your local bookstore. Yeah.
Yes. And that's all the time we have. So thank you to our panelists, Vlaada, Samuli, Jouni, and Touko. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for the questions. If you have more questions, please attack them in the halls when you see them. Thank you very much.